Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Edward Gosselin, who's the CEO of Kobo Resources, a Canadian-listed growth-focused gold exploration company with a compelling new gold discovery in Côte, in one of West Africa's most prolific and developing gold districts, hosting several multi-million ounce gold mines. Edward has a background in law and has become the CEO of Kobo Resources for nearly a decade now. And he's going to share his journey and also the company's journey, the partnership that they've developed, updates obviously on the project, and what I suppose Côte d'Ivoire is like as a mining jurisdiction. Edward's also going to be attending the upcoming Resources Tomorrow event in London, which is on the 3rd to the 5th of December, which is Europe's largest mining event designed to, I suppose, foster innovation, drive collaboration, accelerate growth in the mining industry. And I've got some links in the show notes accompanying this podcast where there's some discounts to get your tickets. So with no further ado, let's welcome Edward to the podcast. How you doing, Edward?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, Rob, for having me on board.
Yeah, appreciate your time. So I wanted you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your career. I said, as I mentioned in the introduction, you come from the law background, and you've been with Kobo nearly 10 years. So just wondered if you could just take us through your career and then how you got involved with Kobo up to sort of present day.
Good. So as you mentioned, an attorney, still an attorney 40 years later. I practiced law for about 20 years, represented banks and commercial institutions, and did a lot of litigation, was involved in bankruptcy, covered a lot of fraud cases and stuff like that. Then I left the law practice to get involved into a couple of businesses over the years. And I had a chemical cleaning company. I was involved in high-tech businesses that was sold, and then started this venture in Côte d'Ivoire about 12 years ago through an attorney-client relationship. And at that time, it was a small alluvial play that was being developed. I didn't like the way that the manager was running it, so went over there and had a look-see and just decided to shut it down on the behalf of the investors, and met the Minister of Mines at that time. That goes way back in 2013. Minister asked me to stick around. He said, we're revamping the mining code, and we're going to be allowing more and more foreigners to apply for licenses. They wanted to make their jurisdiction much more competitive to what it was, and compared to Ghana, Burkina, and Mali at that time. So I did stick around, and I partnered up with a geologist in the name of Paul Sargent in 2014. We applied for small licenses in the summer of 14. They were awarded to us in the fall of 2015. So we were the first group of people to be awarded semi-industrial licenses that they call under the mining code. And they allow you to exploit immediately if you wish, but you're limited to 100 hectares and 30 meters in depth. So what we did instead, we started doing a geochem program on the surface, the permits that we were awarded in the Cossou region in Côte d'Ivoire. And then we made a discovery, which prompted us to sit down with the government and negotiate with them to change the allocation of the zone that was reserved for semi-industrial permits and have it reverted back to large industrial research permits. So that took us a while, 6 months or give or take, to convince them. So in the fall of 2016, I'd convinced them. We applied for the large license at that time was about a little less than 150 square kilometers. And that license was awarded to us in November of 2019, so 5 years ago. And since then, we've been working on the property. At the same time, we applied for 4 others in the eastern part of the country. We were awarded one in the Cote region for 300 square kilometers. And we have 2 others that are pending right now for a total of about 700 square kilometers, give or take. In a nutshell, that was the coming of age of Kobo. So basically, I started it with Paul Sargent 10 years.
So been a bit of a journey then.
Yes, quite. Yes.
Kobo has a strategic relationship with Mota-Engil, a global EPCM leader with a sizable position in KRI. How does the partnership enhance Kobo's ability to scale and develop, obviously, projects compared to, I suppose, other junior miners within, I suppose, West Africa?
We are glad to have on board Mota, as you mentioned. Mota is, I believe, among the top 15 EPC companies in Europe, but has a strong presence in Africa, has been there for 70 years as a civil engineering development company, building hospitals, roads, civil infrastructure, but is also a mining contractor. So they're involved in 9 mines in 8 countries throughout Africa, of which there are 2 that they are the mining contractor in Côte d'Ivoire. One is the Lafigué mine that's operated by Endeavour, and the other one is the Sagala mine, which is operated by Fortuna Minerals. Formerly, that mine was operated by Roxgold. So Roxgold was bought out by Fortuna. So this group, what they did was about 5 or 6 years ago, they created a subsidiary called Luso Global Mining. And their idea with creating that company was to invest ahead of projects. You know, at the very beginning, they were agnostic in terms of minerals. So they would put money in these different projects and hope to bring them along and create value where they would get a higher return for their investment than just, let's say, doing civil engineering or mining contractor, nonetheless, which is still lucrative. So having them on board with us is like having a partner that has all this engineering capability, facility to help us in terms of equipment and so on, as well as capital going forward. So instead of having to outsource this stuff, we now have it in-house and have access to it. Should we decide to take a project from early stage to the development stage. Normally, you would probably outsource all of this out, but now having this partner, we can have access to that expertise, and when we can decide together whether it makes sense to move it forward or just flip the project in order to get a better return for the shareholders. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives us also some muscle in the sense that we can wait out the game a little longer in order to get a better return for our shareholders if the position is to monetize the asset going forward instead of building the mine itself. Because when we created Kobo initially, Kobo was created with the mindset that we were not mine developers or builders. We were mine developers in the sense that we would find ground, explore it, hopefully, discover a sizable asset, and then turn it over to another company that would be interested in developing into a mine. So that was our business model, and still to a certain degree has remained that way. However, with the arrival of Mota, it allows us to take it even a step further and create better or higher shareholder value going down the road. We're glad to have these guys on board, and especially on the Kossou project, I think it gives us way much more flexibility in that sense.
Yeah. And what sets the Kossou gold project apart from other junior gold projects, especially in West Africa? I suppose in terms of geological potential and its proximity to key infrastructure.
Well, the last part of your question, you're right. The proximity in real estate, we use the term location. Location is essential. Well, I think I would apply that to the Kossou Gold Project because of the quality of its location. It's located basically about 35 kilometers away from the capital city of Yamoussoukro. So we can access the property either from the east or the west without having to spend $1 or one quid on road building. We drive up directly to the assets. So the money that we have, we allocated basically just to exploration. So that way, it's fantastic. The other thing that is prime about the Kossou Gold Project is that we're literally adjacent to a power dam. So there's a man-made power dam that was built way back I think, in 1970s by the country. And we're also 9 kilometers away from an existing mine, and that mine derives its power from that power dam. So Kossou is like I would say, a brownfield project, if you wish, instead of a greenfield where you may be located hundreds of kilometers away in the forest, and you need to bring in power, you need to build roads, and you need to bring in water. We have no worries of that nature with regards to our asset. So we're fortunate. This ground was overlooked by a lot of people, was not considered as prime ground. So we are the first to explore that ground. The geology so far is quite similar to what Yaouré has discovered, or what has been discovered at Yaouré. And what we did actually is the geologist happens to be an English geologist. He ran the drill program up until the completion of the DFS for the Yaouré project. He drilled over 160,000 meters. He's now our project manager running our project on Kossou. And we've also retained the services of the structural geologist that worked 7 years at Yaouré. So as a consultant. So now these two gentlemen are on board with us, and what they've seen so far is similar geology, mineralization, and the same type of structure, if you wish. So we're basically in the same package as the RA mine site.
Obviously, junior mining companies often face challenging in exploration finance, and Kobo has obviously done fairly well with regards to obviously financing recently. How does your approach with capital efficiency to ensure sustainable progress across its projects and your exploration strategy?
Well, you're right. It's very hard to raise cash as a junior. It's almost a mission in itself. But for us, the way we approach it is that when we tell investors or potential investors that we want to raise a certain amount, and this is what we're going to do we go out and we do what we said we were going to do. So we were able to attract a couple of institutional investors when we did our RTO on the TSXV. And one of these institutions came on board from Vancouver. When we went back to see him for the second round, one comment that he made to us was that he says, you guys, you executed what you said you were going to do with the money. And the other thing is, you need to be very careful on how you spend your money and at which rate, because it is scarce. It's hard to get. And you need to keep on or keep having the confidence of your shareholders and keep them informed of where you are going with your project and making sure that you're going to have success. At the same time, you can't be shy in making the decision to pull the plug if you feel that you're wasting your time and wasting your money, especially. So we've been upfront with our shareholders on that aspect. As far as the Kossou project is concerned, when we started out, we started slowly with our exploration, basically with a mag survey and the interpretation of the mag, and then we did a geochem program. The geochem program was very successful for us, and it was very cheap. It was cheap exploration, and we were able to identify a lot of anomalies on the property and subsequently trench that. And every time we would identify some anomalies and trench it, we were right there smack on the mineralization. So we took it step by step, and we went the cheap way, even though it takes a little bit longer to get there. But when we were ready to put the drill in, we knew that we should be getting, good results down the road. So it was a systematic approach, mindful of the cash available in the bank, and that it had to last as long as possible. So the idea here is to try and take the dollar and stretch it 7 times if you can, So, and as myself as a CEO and with Paul, our COO, we ourselves, when we started out the company, we were private for a number of, I think it was 7 or 8 years. On average, we would raise anywhere between $350,000 to $500,000 a year. And we did ourselves all of the basic exploration. So I do recall having spent at least several weeks, if not months, exploring the Kossou license with Paul, going through the forest and the bush for over hundreds of kilometers, carrying rocks in our backpack, samples, and so on. So we did a lot of the grunt work ourselves. We're very careful with the cash that our shareholders gratify us with, if I may say.
Yeah. Obviously, Côte is merging as an exploration mining hotspot. Why do you believe Kobo is particularly well positioned to obviously unlock value within the region? And what are some of the near-term milestones should investors look forward to in what your sort of activities?
Well, we recognized way back in 2014, after having met the minister and when I hooked up with Paul, we recognized that Côte d'Ivoire was a great opportunity for exploration because there was a disconnect in the sense that 35% of the Birimian formation of West Africa is within the boundaries of Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire, at that time, we could literally say was maybe 20 to 25 years behind in terms of exploration of its territory compared to Ghana and the other countries. And if you look historically at the gold production, you can see really the disconnect. So when they revamped the mining code in 2014, their goal was to make mining the second economic engine of the country. At that time, they were producing only, I would say, 22 to 25 tons of gold through 4 or 5 mines. Fast forward 10 years now, their production of gold is beyond 55 tons a year. I believe that by the end of 26, they should have 10 operating mines. So there are a lot of opportunities within the country. There's a lot of good ground. And we were fortunate enough way back in 2015, 16, when we applied for the licenses, we got some good ground under us. So one of them obviously is the Kossou project, but the others, like I mentioned, are out in the eastern part of the country. And there as well, there have been a couple of mines that have been identified in the region where we are. So we're well positioned, to further develop other or make other discoveries. The other thing is having brought on board Mota also allows us, like I said before, gives us more muscle, but also has opened more doors for us. A lot of locals who do have licenses or exploration licenses who don't necessarily have the cash or the expertise to bring them to fruition or to take them along as the permit requires them to take it. They're knocking on the door, and there are opportunities for JVs for us. So we're looking at other assets as we're speaking. In terms of the potential or the upcoming milestones at Kossou, last year we completed about 5,000 meters of trenching. We did also 6,000 meters of RC drilling. Subsequent to that RC drilling, we devised our first diamond drill program, which was executed in the first quarter or almost second quarter of 2024, where we completed about 4,400 meters of diamond drill. That was a first pass in order to identify what we had discovered on the RC. The idea was to get some more information as far as the structure is concerned. Since then, we have embarked on a 10,000 meter drill program, the diamond drill program, and which started in around mid of September of this year. We've already got a little over 3,000 meters completed. We've put out quite a bit of results so far. We've been successful. We've had some great returns on our results. We've got one drill going right now. We're gearing up to put a second drill in on the ground within the next couple of weeks. We've moved our staff from Yamoussoukro onto the site, and we've built a campsite there. So in order to be more efficient and to be able to run two drills at the same time. So we should be completing our 10,000 meter program by the end of, I would say, mid-January, end of January of next year. And if obviously the results are at the rendezvous and we're successful, our plan is to raise additional money in order to drill for between 40 to 60,000 meters, and to get us to a level where we're going to be on an inferred basis in terms of a resource. Hopefully that will be at the end of 25, early 26. And being so close to an existing mine, like I mentioned before, 9 kilometers away, the Yare mine site that right now is producing 275,000 ounces a year. It's a 2 million ounce discovery. Lately, the company has announced 500,000 ounce deposit underground. They've applied for a license to mine underground. So far, their production will start to decrease beginning, I think, as if I recall well, 2029. So if we are successful and we play our cards right in terms of drilling and executing the business plan, having an inferred resource in 2026 should be a triggering event in terms of a potential deal. Now, if you're a mine operator next door and you've got a potential headframe project within 10 kilometers of your mine, it makes total sense economically and financially to get your hands on that asset. Our plan so far is to develop Kossou as far as we can in terms of a resource, and hopefully be taken out by our neighbor. However, I mean, success at Kossou can be 500,000 ounces, it can be 700,000 ounces. It doesn't need to be that 2 million plus ounce discovery because of what I mentioned earlier in terms of the quality of the infrastructure. So being close to a mine, roads, water, power, etc., we don't need to invest in that kind of money in order to get there. On the other side of the coin, if Kobo with the Kossou project is successful beyond our dreams, like in the north of 2 million ounces plus, then the game definitely changes for the better of our shareholders. So we've spoken in the past with the larger operators who have frankly told us that our natural buyer is next door. Within 500,000 to 1.5 million ounces, definitely your buyer is there, and it makes total sense. However, should you guys be successful in getting to the north of 2 million plus, definitely these would be different suitors that will come to the table. That's how Kossou has an advantage over other juniors in terms of the potential play that we can have over the next 18 months or so with our exploration program.
Kobo has this obviously strong foothold, as you've explained, in Côte d'Ivoire, with the existing and pending permits. Can you share your vision for expanding Kobo's exploration footprint in West Africa and how this aligns with your broader growth strategies?
Yes. So as I just talked about the Kossou project, that's 110 square kilometers, give or take, that license. The other one that we have in the east is the Kobe license, which is 300 square kilometers. We just finished a mag survey, got the interp on that, and we're about to embark on a geochem program following the identification of a couple of structures that were interesting from the running of the mag survey. And then next door to the Kobe license, we've got two other applications that are going to be submitted shortly to the Mining Commission for approval. And that covers 700, give or take, square kilometers. But we're also in discussions with other players in the region to enlarge our package in that area. And we're also looking at other projects in other jurisdictions within West Africa to replicate our model that we're developing right now at the Kossou project. So definitely there are a couple of things that are on the radar right now. I can't go into details on that, but within the next year or so, we should be able to add some more ground, and hopefully that would fit in well with the prospect of, let's say, monetizing Kossou within the 18 months or so. Then we're preparing the company to have, I would say, a Kossou 2.0, if I may use the term. So that's how we intend to run the business within the next couple of years.
Yeah. Côte d'Ivoire has become a sought-after, obviously, destination, as I've mentioned, and as you've alluded to, for obviously mining investment. And this amid regional geopolitical uncertainties. Can you sort of elaborate on the unique qualities of Côte d'Ivoire and their economy and their political landscape, which will make it, I suppose, make it more attractive for Kobo, and how you see investment evolving for junior miners, West Africa, and I suppose, namely, Côte d'Ivoire?
Yeah, Côte d'Ivoire, I would say 10 years ago, made the right decisions when they revamped their mining code. And that was to attract foreign capital in order to enhance their mining industry. Being the world's number one cocoa producer with 40% of the market, they decided to diversify their economy with the mining industry and the oil and gas. I add, because they've recently made a major discovery off coast that will allow them to become a producing nation. So since the 2014, just before they've had an election, but they've had successful presidential elections over the last couple of 5-year terms. And there has been quite a bit of stability in the country. The GDP of the country has been on average 6%, 7% since, I would say, close to 8 years now, except for the hiccup, obviously, of COVID. But as of late, the government has been investing heavily on road infrastructure. Had you been traveling to Côte d'Ivoire, I would say 10 years ago, and you would go back today, you would see a world of a difference in terms of the quality of the roads. They've invested in higher education for their people. They're investing into the health program. They've developed a minimal health coverage program for their citizens. They're investing into the electrification of the country. So you can see that the Côte d'Ivoire is becoming the real economic engine of West Africa, the way it was maybe 30, 40 years ago. So they're playing catch up on that. And we see a lot of foreign investment, a lot of development on the industrial side. As far as mining is concerned itself, there have been tremendous players that have come to the table, like Barrick has been there for a good number of years. Endeavor is there, Fortuna Silver, and other big players. Recently, Gold Fields has been made a buyout or is making a buyout on Centamin. Centamin has a major discovery within the country. And there have been several gold discoveries throughout the last 6 to 7 years. So the country has evolved positively on that side. There are a lot of labs that are available that have come to the country. For example, in the Kossou region or Yamoussoukro, we have access, if we wanted to 4 or 5 different labs to send our samples to. And right now we're getting a 96 to 120 hour turnaround on our sampling. In terms of personnel, there are geos and technicians that are available to work. And with the change of the economy and the political stability, a lot of expats who are geologists, Ivorian geologists, want to come back home and work within their country. We're seeing that. We're getting requests for job positions from these players. So we feel that Côte d'Ivoire is the place to be. A lot of drilling companies who had been in the neighboring countries because of political instability moved out and are moving into Côte d'Ivoire. We're seeing that influx of services. So it is definitely the place to be in West Africa. I've been going there for over 10 years. I've done a lot of presentations to potential U.S. investors, and people would ask me how safe it is. Is it? Well, I said, I have a better chance of getting shot in the U.S. than I do in Côte d'Ivoire. So that's how safe it is. And progress is there. It might be getting a bit crowded, but it's good. There's still a lot of good ground to be discovered.
That's good to hear. Beyond, I suppose, the minimal potential, Kobo has obviously emphasised community impact and development. Could you discuss the initiatives the company has undertaken to support local communities and how you envision the company's social contributions evolving as the project matures?
Well, on the Kossou license, we hire laborers either from the town of Kossou or the town of Bokobo. So we share the talent pool on that side. But most recently, we've created an event, which is the Kobo Soccer Cup. We equipped the 2 towns with soccer jerseys, and we had our first game a couple of weeks ago in the town of Kossou, supervised by the sous-prefet with the chiefs of villages and the notables. And so that game went well. There was over, I'd say, 400 to 500 people attending the game. And I was asked if we were going to repeat the event next year. I said, definitely. We're going to be getting jerseys for the other town called Angose, which is also within the perimeters of our license. So the people have truly appreciated the gesture and are looking forward to next year's game. The other thing that we're looking at is, if we can, is to drill water wells for the small towns or villages who do not necessarily have access to water. We just drilled a water well for our camp, and we're going to be doing the same thing for the town of, not Kossou, but Bokobo, who does not have access to water. So those are the things that we're involved in. And obviously, as an exploration company, you don't have the same obligations as you do as a mining license. If you had a mining license, the obligations are more important there. But nonetheless, we take our role seriously. And wherever we can hire local talent to allow them to get better wages, we do that.
Lastly, what is Kobo's strategic priorities over the sort of next 6 to 12, 18 months, and particularly for the Cote project? And how do you plan to advance exploration whilst obviously balancing operational scalability?
Well, obviously, for the next 6-12 months, the focus is going to be the Kossou license with the enhancing of the drill program and bringing it to close to an inferred resource, hopefully. So we're well financed right now. We've got money to execute the current program and beyond. And should the mineralization be present and favor us quite in a rewarding fashion, easily. I mean, that way it's going to be easy for us to raise more cash in order to execute. We're going to kicking start the other projects. For us, allocation of capital and the use of the capital in the short term and medium term is focusing on Kossou, monetizing, getting it towards a monetizing event within the next 18 months or so, and spending our capital wisely on the other projects and making sure that we're not stretching ourselves beyond the necessary needs. So that's how we're going to grow it slowly. And we're beefing up the team right now. We've doubled the size of our technical team on the Kossou license. We've added an extra team on the Côte license as well. So scalability will come as we make the discoveries that way.
Edward, thank you for your time. Appreciate you give us an overview of Kobo Resources, an overview of obviously Cote and what's it like as a mining jurisdiction. And obviously wish you well for the remainder of the year going into 2025, especially with all the objectives that you're looking to achieve, and obviously wish you well moving forward. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they want to follow the story, follow the Kobo Resources and get regular updates, how can they go about doing that? What social media platform channels are you on?
Thank you very much. And looking forward to meeting whoever's interested in talking to us. Thank you very much, Rob.
Yeah, no worries. And as I mentioned, you're going to be at the Resourcing Tomorrow event coming up in London on the 3rd to 5th of December. Are you able to tell us a little bit about what you may be speaking about there?
Well, we're going to be speaking about the project what we just talked about today. We're going to be informing potential investors that there's another investment round that's coming up in Q1 of 25. So we're going to be talking about that and hopefully attract some interested parties to the table.
Yeah. And I guess a lot of our listeners, quite a few of our listeners, hopefully will be going. And as I mentioned in the show notes, there's going to be tickets. You can access tickets there, and there's going to be discounts for you to obtain your ticket at a reduced cost. So encourage you, everyone that's listening, to go and click on Resourcing Tomorrow London's website and get your tickets now. Wish you all the best, and hopefully see you in London in a few weeks' time.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. Obviously, Edward has explained what Kobo are doing in West Africa, and namely Cote d'Ivoire. So appreciate always your continued support. As always, keep sharing these episodes, not with people just in our industry, but people outside of our industry, to improve the image and branding and make people aware of what mining is all about. Thank you for listening again. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.